All right, so today, hello everyone. So we're going to do the second thing. We're going to finish this cup today, add a handle and just finish what we do to finish it off. And then we're also going to extrude a handle. I'm going to show you how to do that and how to do that. It does, if you want to use that particular process, it's a thing where you can buy it for $20. And those are the two things that we're going to do today. We're going to finish this cup. We're going to extrude some handles and then stick an extruded handle onto here. All right. So first of all, this cup has dried out a bunch. So Gay, we can't hear you. You got to type in your comments. So I'll keep in the comment section. So Gay, can you hear us? Just nod or something. Okay, good. So here, let's go to, I'm going to spray this down again because it's gotten a little hard. And so it's going to take me a couple times of spraying down to get it wet again. So here, we're going to spray that down. And while this is getting wet, I'm going to talk about handles. So the thing that we've been doing, and I think this is a combination of a couple of us, but I think it was Sharon who originally tracked this down, was these items here. Because if you go to, like a clay store, they have clay extrusion, handheld clay extrusion guns that you can buy. But through some research, I think Sharon was the one who originally came up with this idea within our class is, if I can find it, that one there. So this is the Amazon link here. Now what it will do is I'll include a couple links where you can buy this item. We buy the cheapest one. So let me see, where is it? Yell out if you see it. So all these are what we call jerky guns, and they're running like $50, $54, $65. And they're because they have metal housings. And so, but we found the cheapest one. I don't know about that one. That one doesn't look tough enough. This one looks like it'll work. That looks like the same one as what we got. Where was it? I saw it on here a minute ago. That's why I had this page all loaded up. I saw the exact one. I know. But it was here. I saw it. It was. So there's a lem, but that's $39. This is the metal one. Oh, here it is right here. You guys see it? There it is. That's the one that we're buying. I think it's out. So I actually bought mine from Home Depot. Let's see here. So, oh no, it'll be here. So it'll be in stock January 24th. And then what will happen is, let me show you what I have. Because since we're going to start with that, since this pot's a little dry, we're going to start with the handles. So I bought it. And here it is. We'll get off that. And so I'll include this link in with the video when I email it out to everybody. So here, let's look at it. Oh, that video has gone haywire. My computer's a little freaked out right now again. I don't understand why though, because it should start it. Huh. All right, so now it's started up again. So here is the jerky gun when we look at it. So what is in here? Well, first of all, let's pull these parts out. We'll hide those for right now. So this is what you get. And this is the jerky gun part. And people use things like a caulking gun and stuff like that. It comes with these parts here that you can use for jerky, but we're only concerned about this part right here. And then what we're going to do is when you buy it, with my laser cutter, I can cut you dies so that you can squirt out handles. Okay, and these type of handles work out really good. So I already have the file ready, so all I have to do is just cut them out and they're ready to go. So I cut out a variety of different shapes. What I've been using a lot is the ovalized handle, which this one probably, whichever one's the bigger one, I've been using that one. So I'm gonna use this one today, the slightly, and there's one more that must have gotten lost. Maybe it's still in the box. Oh yeah. Anyway, there's one more floating around somewhere. Because there's one size bigger than this, which I sometimes use. All right, so I'll put these away. So when you use a handheld extruder, the clay needs to be soft. That's the major thing. Soft clay only, because it's really hard to use. And I mean, this is not really meant for this, This jerky gun is not really meant for this, but let's just pull it apart really fast so we can look at the pieces. Goodness. There we go. So it's a plunger, and people have used caulking guns and stuff, but for 20 bucks or whatever, $22, you can't really beat this, right? And it's way beefier than the thing I was using before. I was using a pastry dough squeezer thing, and that finally broke. I finally broke it, and then I made this little oath to myself that as soon as I broke that, I was going to get one of these. So here we go. I'm just going to load some clay into here, into the end. So soft clay, and I always use fresh out of the bag clay. I don't use clay that's been sitting around. I always use clay that's soft. Okay, so there we go. Let me pull these. So I have a couple harder chunks I was fooling around with in there. Need my wire. Let's cut that off. So I'm not going to do that. Oh, I need to do more than that, though. I'm not going to do the lot because I already have a ton of handles already made. So I'm just going to cut a slightly bigger chunk off. There we go. That, and then I'm going to stash this. And then I wedge it always because I want this clay to be really homogeneous. So it's really mixed up really good. So I always wedge this a little bit, sometimes a lot, because I don't want there to be any dry spots in it. Or hard spots. There we go. That's feeling really good. So even this clay is feeling a little bit stiff. Like I might even not use this clay maybe. So this seems like a lot of clay. I'm just going to rip this blob in half. And then, because that's the way it always is. I always end up getting more clay out than I actually need for these because I end up doing a lot of them all at once, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So I want to make this into a fatty coil that's about the same size. Oh, it already is there. So I want this coil to kind of drop in there like this. Oh, let's just pull this back so it's all the way. So it's all, oops, sorry. So I'm going to pull this way up so we kind of get a more of a bird's eye view of what's going on. So then I'm going to drop this guy in there, right? So, ooh, that's perfect. So I want it to fit almost exactly in like that. And I can kind of shovel it in. So now that's in there like that. And then I am going to put this end on. This guy will drop in there. So I've measured this so that just fits in there just right. You see that? And then I'm going to screw it in. So generally for me, when I extrude these, I want this die going this way, just because it's easier for me to handle, to catch it as it comes out if it's facing that way. So I'm going to spin that around a little. There we go. So you see how the die is facing that way to the handle, perpendicular to the shape of the handle. And hopefully it doesn't, well, it's spinning around a little bit. Maybe we can spin it. There you go. So that's close enough. All right, so now the die that I cut with my laser cutter is in there, and then I'm just going to crank on this and squirt it out. So we want to switch cameras. So here we want to just squirt this out. So what I'm going to do here is this is the way how I squirt them out, is I do it this way. I lean this sucker against the edge of the table like this so I can hold on to it, because as you're squirting out, if you're jiggling this around, that it'll leave marks on your handle. So what I do is here, I extrude it all the way down to the ground by just sitting there, and I keep squeezing this over and over and over again. Let's see if we can back this off some. So that way I can just lean it up against here and it'll just hang. Gravity will hang, and I'm not going to be shaking this around, because if I shake this around, it's going to make my handle look a little goofy. So I push down here, so I'm pushing down, and then I'm going to start squeezing with this hand. There you go. So it's going down, and now the pressure's starting to build. Ooh, this is really good. So this is way better than so this is the first time I'm actually using this, but I was using my pastry gun in exactly the same way. So you see, ooh, this is way better. Oh, something happened. Oh, Oh, I didn't screw the end on very well. Ah, give me a second. So the end came unscrewed, so I need to get that back in there. Let's see, hopefully this works still. There we go. Here it goes. Oh, look at this. So there's something wrong with this. Mine, this ain't coming. Give me a second, because this end is blowing out too. Something's wrong. All right, gotta start over. Got clay in there. So maybe I got a dud one. Let me screw it. Yep. Oh. We'll try one. So you know what I'm going to do next time? So next time I'll recut these dies, and I'll explain it to you in a minute. I'll fix this problem. Because it's going down. It seems to be working. I mean, it feels good on my side. Okay, it's working now. There it goes. See how it's going down. Now, always the first part of it always does a weird curly thing, and you always just get rid of that. And that will live to fight. That chunk of clay will live to fight another battle. But then once it gets long enough, the clay, weight of the clay holds it straight. Okay? Huh. Someone's mic is, someone needs to mute their mic because they're moving around a lot. So I go all the way down to the floor. So I'll hold it here. I don't know if you can see it. So I go as long as I can, and I wait till it's touching the floor because I want the maximum amount for the how much work I have to put in. So I'll lift it up slowly. So you see that? I want all the way down to the floor. And sometimes then what I'll do is I'll actually lift it up a little bit like that off the table and squirt a few more squirts just because I want the maximum amount of length for how much work I have to put into it. I can't leave it up like this forever. So I gotta get it off of here. So I'll show you that. So what I do for that is I just grab a hold of it here, kind of pinch it off. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay it here on the table very gently. Oh, there we go. So now I have this beautiful length, right? And it's pretty straight. If you look at it, it's really good, beautiful, and straight. And then I know just from experience that I need about 7 inches of length to make the handles that I like to make for mine, just from doing it over and over. So every 7 inches, I make a cut. Oh, this die? Oh, I don't know. I never actually, I mean, I measured it when I made it. It's about 1 inch wide, this handle, right? So, and I don't know, for me, working with the dies always seem bigger when you're holding it than when it comes out, right? But it seems to work okay. So here, every 7 inches, I make a cut. So I could do 2 here for 14. But for you, you may have a different length of handle, right? So you may do whatever. For a while, I was doing 6.5, but then I was finding at 6.5, I wasn't getting the length that I needed sometimes. Okay, so that worked out great because this length is just about 7. This length is already just about 7, so we're good. All right, so now that I got all these pieces, I have these little Tupperware boxes like this. You see that? And when I'm going to put them in the boxes. So let's just look at this one because I have some that I made before Christmas time. Ooh, these are getting actually a little bit stiff, right? But they're like all like a little bit harder than leather hard. So what I'm going to do with these guys is I'm going to pull these out. And what is going on inside this box? Let's just pull them out and look. What I did in here is this is just a little chunk of Hardy backer board that I cut to fit inside my box. Okay. And then what I do is I usually will soak this in water in the sink, but we'll just do it here. Just pour some water in, and then hopefully that will soak in, give that a few minutes. Because I should have maybe done this, kind of redid this before. Let that soak up a bunch of water, letting it slosh around. Usually I just let it soak in the sink for a little bit. There we go. That's probably enough. And I'll dump most of the water out back into here. And then there's still water below, right? So if this starts to dry out more, then I will, since these are so dry, I'm going to dunk these boys in here. And then that will help wet them down a little bit. So these are all about 7 inches. And then so that they take up less space, I kind of do this like that, so they don't take up the whole space. So I guess I have a whole nother box of these too that I made before Christmas, thinking that I was going to make a ton of these over Christmas. And I just ended up doing a bunch of other projects around the house over Christmas break. So those are those ones. And then what we do with these ones is I like to put this curve, pre-bend them already when they go in, so I don't have to kind of mess around with them as much. So here I use one of these, just anything round. It could be your rolling pin or whatever. And I take this guy and I just bend it around like that. You see that? To make kind of the beginning of the handle, right? So whatever shape your handle is going to end up being, kind of start it off. And then, oop, I messed it up. Okay, John, focus. So here, kind of start it off, right? And then I just lightly put it in there. So for 20 bucks, right, you can have your own little home extrusion setup that makes these perfect little handles. These extruded handles, now these handles I probably would never put on a thrown piece, but for these hand-built pieces, a hand-built handle looks really good. So you see how they're all just dropping right in there? And then I have I have another whole box like this sitting over there. So that box is probably in the same state that these are. It's probably a little bit, there's a lot of water still on top of it. We'll have to see in a little bit. So there's one more handle that we can use, but I'm not going to put it in there yet. This is the handle I'm going to use today. So I'm going to bend that and then just set it out here because it needs a chance to dry out a little bit. So then this box just gets put away. So normally when I'm working, I'm in and out of this box several times a week, right? So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have like 10 handles in here. So I think I have like 14 in the other one. So, because I don't like cleaning this guy up, right? I'm lazy. So you see how this started to blow out again here? So what I'm going to do when I cut this, I'm going to recut these so that all these dies, if I could find all these dies here, will fit inside this plastic part here. That's what I'm going to do. So that lid screws down even a little bit better. That makes sense? Because right now these dies fit on the rim of this. And I'm going to cut them so they fit inside of there. So this thing could get threaded on really good. All right, so that will solve that problem. So I'll clean this off later. These dies, though, do not leave them too long inside the clay because it's just plywood. And what happens if I leave them inside, they'll warp and delaminate and bad things will happen. So as long as I clean it off by the end of class, that's good. Clean it all out. And what I would do is I would just keep refilling this till I ran out of storage space because I just don't like doing it. So I think I make 20 at a time usually. And that's enough to keep me. So no matter how hard I work, that's several days worth of handles for me because I'm just not a fast worker. All right, so let's go back. So handles made, so that's ready. And that's actually good that I made it already because I like it to be a little bit stiffer than this. So we're going to set that aside. Bring this back into play. So here's my cup. So it's still just a touch dry. So I'm going to spray it down one more time before we look at it. Okay, so it's sprayed down just a little bit. So let's take a good look at where it is right now and what needs to happen. So here we go. So it's looking really good, right? It's looking pretty happy, right? Here. And the pattern's looking good. The seam looks okay. It's a little bit ovalized, so that's why I'm spraying it down so much, because I want to round it off. So I want to do that. And the way it was a few minutes ago, it was too stiff, but I feel it now. It's starting to get there. Ooh, so it's starting to get there. So now when I squish it, it's bending a little. That's perfect. So let's give it just another minute. So the places that I still need to do work on, always, no matter how good I built it the first time, no matter how clean it was when I built it, I always still got to take care of the rim. It's too square. And sometimes I have to take care of the bottom, right? And then I got to put a handle on. And then other stuff I fix along the way if I need to. Okay, so how do I do the rim? So I'm going to get one of these guys out because I know I'm going to need to use it here in a minute. So I need to get my Sureform. So this is, we have a couple different kinds of Sureforms that we use. So this is one. You guys have all seen this one, right? And this is one that I really like to use. So this is just, let me see if I can decreate it. This is just one of the flat foot long Sureforms, right? That I've used a piece of string and I've cut it so that the loops will hook on to these ends right here. You see that that's the ends of the Sureform. They have these little, I don't know, brackets on the end. And so what I do is I make a loop that fits into that little groove at the end of the bracket. So there's a better, I don't know if you can see, come on, focus. If I do that. So you see there's a little groove right here where that bracket meets and the string will drop right into there. So here, we'll see it on this side. See how the string is in there, it rides in that groove. And then what we do is this loop needs to be a little bit shorter than this. And then what happens is I can pull this tight and the loop will help create a bend there because it's creating like a very slight bow in this. So why do we need this? Well, for doing lightweight work like this, this has a much better feel for scraping because I can use just like my fingertips and hold this and I'll have a very good feel for how much pressure I'm using because this is actually really thin already. I can't be too aggressive. This is kind of has too much bulk and weight. I can't really feel very much how it's doing. So here we use this and I scrape using this guy. And I only use this on the outside because it doesn't really, it can't get it on the inside. There we go. So I'm just scraping away, just like normal. So I brought out my banding wheel. This is another thing. If you don't have a banding wheel and you're going to do clay, you're kind of committed to clay, get a nice banding wheel. This is a Shimpo banding wheel. It's really good. Lockerbie makes some good banding wheels. I think Bailey makes a banding wheel. Those big companies, all have good banding wheels. So you want one that kind of spins. Shimpo is really good. So when I bought it, Shimpo was kind of the standard, but there are lots of really good banding wheels out there. Some people like the ones that are taller so they can reach underneath and twirl. I like those too, but I was cheap. So that's not the one I bought when I was in graduate school. This was like 10% or 20% cheaper. So I bought the cheaper one. And I figured if I wanted it taller, I would just stick books or something underneath. Right. But I wish I had both right now because sometimes you want the piece up higher. And anyway, and it's nice to be able to reach down there and grab that spindle and spin it with your other hand. All right. So I'm going to clean up so I rounded off the outside of the rim. I'm going to round off the inside of the rim. And you could use anything for that. I'm just going to use this knife here and just scrape that corner down. So I'm just using, this is a fettling knife and I'm just using this side of it right here and just scraping along the corner because it doesn't need to be rounded off that much, and because sometimes these edges are really thin, I can't even really scrape off that much because the edges are so thin. But I want this spot to be nice, happy and inviting and nice for people to drink out of. And then here I'm also going to scrape the outside of that. Maybe I'll switch to my credit card rib and just scrape that. I'm just right here. I'm not really trying to scrape off clay. I'm just trying to scrape off the Sureform marks, right, that are coming off of there. There we go. So there, it's pretty smooth. It has lots of crumbs on it, but the shape, I've gotten the shape down to what I like, right? I want just a pretty nice, even roundness up there, okay? And if you don't want that, right, you do what you need to do to make it work. You could also use a green scrubby pad, right? So here we go. And you could do that. I usually use a smaller one than this, but I try to fold it like into this U shape, right? And then I'll run it around. And I just want to be careful that these edges that are hanging down across my design don't scrubby pad my design away, right? So I have to be very careful that this part here is only the part right here is the only part touching this part. I don't want to use the outside of the scrubby pad to scrub this away. I want to be as least disruptive to this outside design as possible. So I work so hard, right, to design it, to make it the way I want it to be. I don't want to scrub any of that away. So sometimes I skip this step because I always use a sponge at the end. Sometimes I do the scrubby pad instead of the scraping, right, that I did with the Sureform. Sometimes I could get away with just, it depends on what kind of mood I'm in, right? So sometimes I don't even use a scrubby pad for weeks for this part. I just, you know, it was just the scrubby pads. My teacher wasn't into it when I was, and so it's not really in my workflow, right? But I use it for my beginning students. So now I have them and there. So see how much better that looks? It looks really good. But then I always come by with a sponge at the end to clean it up. And I had a sponge out. Where did it go? All right, can't find my sponge. I'm just going to use this chamois. It'll do the same thing. Soak it in the water. Okay, so while that's soaking, I can try to round, I can use the rounder tool now and round it off. So here, you could see that it puckered out by the seam, right? Just naturally, it does that every single time. It's always trying to ovalize this way. So that is the place that I pop it in there. And you can see that there's a little bit of a gap. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. There's a little bit of gap right here. So let me pull up my flashlight. You guys will see it really well. So if you look inside, there's a little bit of a gap, right? There's always a gap at that seam. You see where the light's popping out? So that's a place that I always need to push back. But that isn't too bad, right? Because I haven't tried to re-round this since last time we saw it. I just covered it up and let it be. And right, so let's see if there's a gap anywhere else. There's a little bit of a gap there, not too bad. There's a little bit of gap there, not too bad, not too bad, right? But the seam is always the worst, right? You see how much bigger that is. So that is the real reason why I use the rounder all the time. So now let's push that back in. So I'm just going to push that against here. Do not push this guy down, right? Because that will crack your piece. Always, especially right now, push these parts in, okay? When it was wetter, right, you could push down a little bit to help it, but really it's about pushing in. And by pushing in here, those other parts will loosen and this will drop down just a little bit. All right, so that's good enough for now. I'm going to redo that again after we're done. So here it's looking, if you look at it, it just looks so much better, so much more round. You can actually still see it like so. All right, so now let's do the rim. So this chamois now is, I could do this with a sponge, but I think I was using them when I was throwing and it's underneath my throwing stuff. All right, so here I'm gonna just chamois this back and forth. So I'm just gonna do it like the scrubby pad because I want that rim to be really polished. If you think about the rim, like this rim is rims of cups are very intimate places, right? You think about, just look around where you are. How many of these things would you stick in your mouth, right? There's probably nothing, or unless you have a cup sitting there in front of you, none of these things you would stick in your mouth. So I wouldn't stick this in my mouth. I wouldn't stick this in my mouth. I wouldn't stick this in my mouth. But if you have a cup sitting there, people just stick that in their mouth without even thinking. They don't know where that's been, right? It could have been sitting right next to this all day long, and you're still willing to do that, right? You're still willing to stick that in your mouth. So as a potter, you have responsibility to that future person. And by the way, that future person is probably you, right? Take it, be nice, because this person is actually going to kiss this space, right? You don't let people into that space really even. right? If some stranger comes up and sticks their finger in your mouth, you're going to freak out, right? So you're letting this stranger into your house, into your mouth. So take it easy, be nice, right? And be courteous to the user who's going to use it next. All right, so that's done. And basically what I do is I work my way down from top to bottom. Hopefully the inside looks okay, right? The inside looks okay. But if it doesn't, that's when I would wet the sponge down probably and scrub up and down inside. That's why I do that. The reason why I use this, I found that if I just hold on to a big sponge and do that, my fingers going in and out of there and my nails or something rubbing up and down, my hand ends up banging around in there and actually sometimes making it worse. So if I was going to do lots of scrubbing, right, I would actually probably put a bigger sponge on here because then it would just cover more space. But I usually don't have much cleanup, so I only do a little bit. But my first version of this was much bigger, right? Had a much bigger blob, so I could really just clean up really quick, right? But I don't really have much to do in there. So then I look at the sides, and if there are any big scratches or anything, I will take care of those now. I don't really see much going on here. It looks a-okay. No, don't worry about the powder. So there's a little bit of powder. Don't worry about that powder that's on there. Okay, so the next spot, then I turn it upside down, and I next have to deal with this. Because remember, I had to do some extra scraping away down there. Let me see if I can find a rib that could deal with that pretty good. So here, I'm just going to come back and... Actually, that doesn't look so bad. For all the work I did down there, it doesn't seem too bad. So what I'm going to do maybe is just to kind of unify everything, I'm going to take this green scrubby and scrub at it, but I need my foam. Where's my foam? So I have this corrugated foam so things don't roll away. Right, so I use a foam like this, so when I put the cup down, especially when I'm working on a handle, it doesn't try to roll off. When I use the flat piece of foam, especially after you put the handle, I want the handle facing up, and that adds too much weight, and sometimes it rolls off the bat, rolls it off. So get corrugated foam or the foam that looks like egg carton stuff, right, with pointies. Get those so your cup doesn't roll away when you're working on it, and that way it's less stress. Even just the stress of it rolling away, you know, changes the way how I work. All right, so now I just need something that's a little bit, let me see. Oh, we were just going to do this. So here I'm just going to scrub at it with this because I think that will be enough. This is something I couldn't do before because it was just too soft. I remember I cleaned it up a little bit. I don't use too much water, if you notice. There we go. It's looking good. Looking good. So that's looking pretty good. And then now I do the very bottom. Let's look at that. How does that look? Looks okay. So maybe I'll take a sponge to that. Aha! I don't have my sponge, so we'll go with that. And I'm just going to scrub at it with the chamois, but normally this would definitely be a sponge. Chamois, since I use it mostly at the wheel, it's usually just over there, but the chamois seems to work. Okay, so that's looking groovy. There. So you see, I want a pretty clean look, but I've been leaving the wood texture. I've been leaving that wood texture on there from the wood stamp. There's some lines and stuff that always happen. I've been leaving those. All right, so then re-round. Again, and then so even just doing that, a space has kind of popped up there. Make sure that's rounded again, and then handle time. Okay. All right, so for me, let's just look at the handle, what we're going to do with the handle. So this should be about right. So this is actually it's a little bit wetter than the way how I normally would want it, but the handle is going to look like this when I put it on. And so you can see that it's already kind of in the shape that I want. Maybe it just needs a little bit more bow down here. So, but I'm only really worried about this top part right now. So let's put it on. I'm gonna have this tip downward so it's ready to go. I need to get my slip out. All right, so I'm going to cut this off. So I want to cut this off. So the way it's going to attach is like that, right? Let's raise this up some so you guys. So it's going to attach like that. So what I want to do, since this is the flat side here, I want to attach it and cut this off right like in that direction. So you see that line, focus. So you see that line, that's exactly the angle that I want to cut this clay off at, like that. So what I do though is always cut from this way. And I try to follow that angle down, and I kind of rock it back and forth because that's the angle that it needs to attach at. And this is a fettling knife, so it's super dull, so I can make that cut. So you see that cut, that should be pretty good. And then I'm just going to test it out to see, make sure it looks okay. Hey, that's looking pretty good. The other thing I like to do is, since this cup is round going this way, see it's round going this way, I want to put a little bit of roundness right here. And I will usually use anything round that I have lying around. So here I have this round thing. I'll just push it up against the side of this really fast, since this is kind of round. So to kind of create that a little bit of roundness, you see that? So it just attaches really nicely. All right, so then I dip this in water, and then I'm going to kind of put it kind of use that water stamp to kind of stick it on there. I usually center it over the seam just for a second, and that's the area I'm going to score. So I need to get my scoring tool out, and then I'm going to score that area. There we go. And then I'm going to score this face here. There we go. So both faces are scored. There we go. And then I'm going to get ready to attach by using my slip here. Add some slip here. There. And then I'm just going to drop it on just for a second and then attach. We're not going to talk too much about what I'm doing because I'm sure you guys know about how to attach handles. So the way I attach it though is I wiggle it back and forth in place like that a little bit, and then I have to push it maybe a little bit down from here. I want pretty clean attachments, but you know, I'm never really super duper happy with the way how my handles attach, right? So I just wish they looked a little bit better. So here I'm just giving it some shape now, and I'm going to straighten this out here a little bit, come up. So I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. And now I'm going to make the cut here for the bottom so I can attach to the backside. So you can see that I've only taken off that much clay, right? And I'm only going to take off just a little bit there. So you can see that 7-inch length that I cut is about right. Right. So, but if I knew I was going to make taller cups or some other type of cup that needed a wider, bigger handle, I would need to cut my length longer than 7, right? So this time with this tool, I will cut this part off here. It's always good to have some to cut off, right? It's always much, much better to cut more off, to have extra handle to cut off before you attach rather than have not enough handle. There we go. So I want to look at that. To me, I don't know. For right now, it seems like it's going a little bit far away. I'd love it if that handle rode a little bit tighter against the form. So I'm just going to cut off another chunk. Like that. Pull it off, stick it down. That to me looks better. And I could fill out that curve here in a second. I just want to attach, get ready to attach. I don't know, right about there seems okay. Goober the inside of that, plop it on for a second. So I'm just trying to eyeball it to make sure it's looking right all the way around. So you see how it's coming out a little bit at an angle going this way. I'll fix that here in a minute. I guess I'll fix that right now. Kind of straighten it out. Just making sure it looks good as it goes all the way around before I smoosh this down. Smoosh. Smoosh. Kind of vibrate back and forth. So these handles usually attach and do really well. I don't have much cracking, where my pull handles for some reason have a much greater chance of cracking. and falling off. So the part that's usually cracks for me is that joint right there. But if I do this next step, that joint, I don't have any more problems, is I just take this part and I make sure that part is really mushed in there against there and wiggle it back and forth like that. All right, so that's attachi. That's looking pretty clean, pretty good. And then what I do for this, this is the time when for sure I'll use my sponge stick and clean it off. Right, and I just lightly wipe that around. There we go. There we go. And then in there doesn't need much cleanup yet, but what I'll do with that one, since I can't reach it in there with a sponge stick, is I'll just find a little itty bitty brush, like something like this, right? Because there's extra slip in that area. See, there's an extra blob of slip in this area right here. So what I'll do is I'll just take this little brush and clean that slip off, kind of pick it up. So I have a nice clean attachment right there. Wipe some of that off. There we go. So you see how that's looking really good. And if it starts to look like it's pulling apart, I'll moosh that back in. Let me clean that up just a little bit more. Needs a little bit more cleanup. There we go. All right, so usually there's a pattern on here, but now I have to put my chop on. So since there's always usually a pattern down there, I've been putting my chop at the base of a handle. So there's my chop there. And then I'm going to stamp it, make sure it's going right way up. Because the handle's so fresh and moldable, I'm going to use my finger and put my finger back there as I stamp this down. Make sure it's centered. There we go. And there it is. The cup is done. So as it's drying, I dry these out slow-ish now, because the handle really, for me, adds a lot of danger because the cups themselves hold together pretty good. This part, the cylinder and the base, usually I have no problems with that other than the warping and getting a little bit ovalized. It's the handles that have an issue because I've added a piece of clay that's not like the other. So these handles often have a little bit of cracking problem up here. So I'm going to let this dry in a bag at least overnight before I set it out again. And I usually leave it upside down like this so as it's drying. Okay. And then that's it. Then I take it to campus and I fire it. Everything else looks good. You guys have any questions or comments about it? The whole process? Did I miss anything that you guys are doing? These little scraps of clay we throw in here and put in there. Ah, I know. We didn't make the slip yet, did we, for class? We forgot. I forgot to do that. So I'll do that for you guys next class. We'll start either next week. So I'll do the dryer lint slip, attaching slip. Yeah, go ahead. Hmm? Good, thank you. So it's like that's part of the reason why I decided, because I was using I made all those other shapes, right, of the extrusion handles, and I tried them out and they're just a little bit pokey, right? And I know that this oval handle is kind of like super boring, right? As far as like, if you wanted the most generic Walmart-y kind of handle, this is almost it, right? This is what they would stick on any $5 porcelain cup there at the aisle, but it does work, right? It just works. So I'm okay with that, right? And that it is just a regular handle and all the work is here, right? And it fits, I think, with what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be clean, right? I'm trying to hand build clean. So I'm hand building like the way I try to throw, right? So still a potter, but thank you. That was a good comment. Thank you very much. Uh-huh. So you could also just trying to flip that. How does it feel if you do the other way around where you put the oval on the other side, right? So I made all those handles and did them both ways, except for the ones that were obviously that surface shouldn't go on the inside, right? So, and if you have a handle that you want to try and you have that extruder, right, just send me the drawing of the handle that you want to try, right? And if you have the extruder, I'll cut you a die for it. That makes sense? So come up with some ideas. Hmm. Uh-huh. That is very good, right? So that would be a very good thing to do. Yes, I think that works great. Do it that way, right? I like, yeah. Yep, try it. Exactly. So when I made all those extrusions, I was doing it both ways because then the opportunity cost, right, for that goes down. Like it doesn't cost me anything really because I don't have to even go through the effort of shaping it or anything. And for me to squirt out 20 of them is about the same amount of work for me to make 10 of them or 2 of them. Right. So I just would make a bunch and I would just bend a few the other way and just see how they looked. Um, hey, awesome. All right, so I'm gonna stop the recording. Stop recording.